We don't get a whole lot of candidates up here. What is the payoff for a candidate coming to Alaska? I know your father did well here, finished third. You guys capitalized, I think, a little bit on his organization. But when you see candidates like Trump pulling 30,000, 40,000 in Alabama, what do you hope to gain by a small ballroom here?
Well, you know, the nomination's a long process, and you've got to get delegates individually by state. Alaska actually has as many delegates, almost as many delegates as Iowa does. Alaska also has an independent, libertarian spirit, and I think there's a great deal of resonating of our message up here. There's a groundswell and a movement already here, so we want to get that organized, be the first up here, and hopefully be able to capture the vote in Alaska. But it is a long process. Right now, we're going through the early stages, and we'll see how it shakes out. It's also, from what I understand, easier to travel in and out of here in August than it is in December. So.
And cheaper.
Have you been to Alaska before?
This is my first trip, and I've always wanted to come up here, and we're enjoying it. I wish I could stay longer and enjoy more of the outdoors.
You got in last night, right?
I got in late last night. We'll do a stop here and in Fairbanks, but I'm only able to stay today.
Okay.
But also with Alaska, is this a signal that you're in it for the long haul?
Yeah, because I mean our next stops are Washington State, Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming, all western states, many of which are caucus states. Many have the same sort of independent, rugged individualism that other western states have. And yeah, but the interesting what the long haul is, when people talk about the long haul, there's 4 primaries in February. There's about 25 in the first 15 days of March. I think y'all are in the first 15 days of March.
What kind of issues are Alaskans asking you about?
You know, I think they're interested in energy issues. You have a lot of oil and gas up here, and a lot of people work in the oil and gas industry. They're hearing from Hillary Clinton that she's not really for allowing much drilling in Alaska. I'm a big believer that Alaska should make a lot of these decisions. I think really most decisions should be made by states, not by the federal government. So I'd get the federal EPA out of here. It doesn't mean there'd be no rules or no controls, but I just have the controls originate in Alaska.
Someone in the crowd told me she wanted to ask you why you prefer an income tax to sales tax.
I prefer lower taxes. So I want a smaller government and less taxation. You can have less taxation in various ways. You could have it just as a sales tax or just as an income tax. To me, the most important thing is that there be lower taxes and smaller government. The problem with converting to a sales tax from an income tax is people see it as regressive, where maybe the working class may have to pay more. They have a proposal with a rebate or a prebate and all of this stuff. But changing entirely from one system to another, I think, is harder to get the public to accept than I think going to a low, flat, single rate. But a low, flat, single rate, I think, would create great economic growth. The Tax Foundation has said my tax plan would create more jobs than any other plan that's been proposed.
Last question from me. President Obama will be here next week. I understand your trip is set up before that, but can you talk a little bit? Is there any little jab there to the president for you getting here before he does?
I actually didn't know he was coming, but I'm always happy to jab when I can. And, I think his philosophy is just different than mine. His philosophy is he wants people in Alaska to send more money to Washington and that he'll do good things with it. If I lived in Alaska or, I live in Kentucky, my philosophy is if you take more of my money and send it to Washington, it'll probably either be wasted, squandered, or used to actually hurt businesses in my state. We've lost 7,000 jobs in the mining industry. And the same way they went after the coal mining industry, they're going to come after the oil and gas industry next. And so what we need is as much freedom as possible and allow energy to come out of the ground. We need to learn to appreciate what electricity does for us. We often sort of have all this negativity towards energy production. We need to realize the jobs and the money created by it. We also need to realize that the countries that produce electricity, the top 10 countries that produce the most electricity, live 25 years longer than the countries that produce the least amount of electricity. So electricity actually is good for your health.
What's the biggest thing you think you could do for Alaska as president?
Get the government to leave you alone. Get the government out of your personal and business lives. Have the government quit collecting all of your phone records. And then have the government primarily involved with defending the country.
Do you think that Congress should move to open ANWR to drilling?
Yep.
This morning on the news coverage, someone asked you about Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. I didn't hear the Biden answer, what you thought about the president's nod to him.
Well, it's really not, up to me to help them decide who they want to run. I don't, he hadn't done very well in previous runs for the presidency. I don't know all the ins and outs of his decision-making process. I've met him personally. He's a personable person. I think he's a well-intended person, but like most people on the left, wrong about most issues of the day. So we'll see, and I think the more the merrier over there. I think one of the interesting things is people have concluded for a year or more it's Hillary Clinton's to lose. It's going to be Hillary Clinton. And many people have been telling me, and I've been one of those saying, I don't think it's so certain that she's definitely going to win. The email thing is a huge deal because it goes to wisdom and whether or not she'd make good decisions as commander-in-chief. I think she jeopardized national security by using her own email server. I think she was more concerned with her own, we are the Clintons, we do whatever we want kind of stuff, and we'll do it despite that it might threaten national security. That and her lack of defense of Benghazi when for 9 months they pleaded for more help and she didn't give it. I really do think those things preclude her from being considered. And if I'm the nominee, I'll hammer her day in and day out as someone who lacks the wisdom to be commander-in-chief.
Thanks, guys.
What kind of lessons did you learn from your father's campaign here in Alaska, and how are you changing it, or are you?
Well, I think that sincerity and believing in limited government really is popular and brings a lot of people together. And there are a lot of people here today who were great supporters of his because he was the first person in a long time really to speak truth to power without fear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.